I know I did this the very first test jam, but not a lot of people came to the first one because they didn't know it was happening. But this journal has 1 page left in it. So I'm going to do a flip. Are you guys into that? Are you into a flip? I love Austin, Texas. I lived there for a while. I have 1 unfinished spread and 1 completely open spread. So I thought I'd do a flip through. All right, you want to do that? I'm going to just make sure that there's not an outrageous amount of cleavage happening here before I do this. How's that? Pretty good? That. There we go. There we go. All right, hello everybody and welcome to Monday Journal Jam Live with Effie Wild. I am in the Wilderhood, which is facebook.com/groups/Wilderhood, which is the only place that I am seeing comments because I cannot keep track of multiple comment streams. There is someone in the group right now waiting for you to join us. If you'd like to come on over, they will let you in as soon as they see your request so that you can look for the watch party. The watch party is the only place where I'm watching comments, so please make sure that you're looking for that. We're going to do a game of Journal Jam today, but first I wanted to take you on a little tour of my art journal, which is almost completely filled, which is why I want to show it to you. This is a journal that was made for me by Gu Guarino, who passed away in 2014. I miss her dearly. She and I were internet friends, and she used to moderate many of my groups. She was in Book of Days and other groups that I ran, and she used to moderate for me. She was the loveliest friend, just the quietest, loveliest friend. And the last thing that I ever said to her was, I wish I could kiss you right on your forehead. I love you, you matter. And that is the last thing that I said to her before she passed away. Anyway, she made this journal, and I have 2 of her journals. When I'm finished with this journal, I am actually going to pull out the other one and start working in it. I had already decorated it, but I don't love it. I'm not loving the decoration. I had started doing Brave Girls in this, but I can never get into Brave Girls for some reason. For some reason, I always stop at some point. Maybe because I'm already doing so much therapy in my life that it just feels like a little bit too much. Catherine, that's a fantastic idea. So I have 1 almost completed spread and 1 last spread. This is the last spread in the journal before this journal is completely finished. I love finishing a journal. The sense of accomplishment that I get from finishing a journal is just amazing to me. So this cover was made in 2014. So I've had this journal hanging around since 2014. I named the journal Naked in the Garden of Hope. This was right around the time that my husband ended our relationship. And it wasn't long after that that Goog actually passed away. So this sat on a shelf forever. I really hoarded it and didn't start working in it until 2018. Because it was just too precious to me. So here we are in 2018, finally deciding that it's time to pull this Goog journal off the shelf. What size is it? I really don't know. So 10 by 8, which is a really interesting, 8 by 10, which is an interesting size. It also has flip outs, which you will see as I flip through the journal. So here is the very first spread. This was an experimentation with figures. I am in love with this little pixie. I plan on actually doing a lesson on this at some point. Kelly, my favorite journals to work in are the ones I make myself. So this is an example of a handmade journal by moi. These are made with Canson XL watercolor paper, bound in canvas. So this is the signatures are just sewn into canvas. And these are the one, I build a new one every single year and fill it every single year, and have done so now since 2012. Maybe I'll do a flip of this as well, because not everyone in here is in bod or moonshine, so you may not have seen the work in this, so maybe we'll flip through that one as well. And I've also got a third journal on the go. I've got several journals on the go right now, but this one here is no longer being made. It's the hot press journals that Tamara Laporte was selling on her site there for a little while. And this one is getting there. Not quite, but it's getting there. I'm actually currently working on this spread in this journal. So I like to have several journals going. One for work, you know, one so that it's all stuff that I'm teaching and demonstrating, and then personal ones that aren't necessarily meant for human consumption. They're only meant for my eyes. So this one, which I decorated in 2014 and started to fill in 2018, is really, really precious to me, obviously. I really love this journal. I love the paper. It's Stonehenge paper. So it is a little bit difficult to work with compared with the paper I usually use, but it does stand up quite well to the stuff that I'm throwing out of it, or throwing at it. So you can see here, we've got this flower, and then look, this flips open. And we have one of my first elongated faces. She's just slightly elongated. And then I started to take that more and more elongated over time because I really liked the look of it. And then just some journaling here. And I loved that I matched up the flower. That really made me super happy. And this was an experiment with a selfie, which I used graphite transfer paper to transfer onto the paper. The intention was to do a spread that really reflected an enormous amount of sadness that I was experiencing at the time. Catherine, it's a little bit less toothy and not quite as sturdy as the Canson XL 140-pound paper. So I know when I work in this journal to be careful with, you know, heavy applications of water, because it will pill up a little bit. And I like paper that has tooth so I can scrub. And this one is very, very smooth. So it's a little bit out of my comfort zone. And this was just an experiment with mark making and then isolating different shapes and then glazing around it. This was a graphite transfer of the barest outline of my face and neck that I then turned into this. Beautiful. I love this spread. It's one of my favorites. May all beings be free of suffering. I just love, love, love this spread. And I mean, I don't need to tell you what these are. You can see what they are. This was an experiment with like little tiny, tiny flowers. And this is deli paper that I used to get the text in, because deli paper kind of melts away when you glue it into a journal. I remember watching The Affair. Sarah Trump and I both watched The Affair, like we binge watched it, and stuck with it, even though it was just like there were just some parts that were so hard to even deal with. So I remember I was watching The Affair when I was painting this. And finally, when we got to the end of The Affair, we felt justified in sticking with it, right, Sarah? Well, this is an experiment with watercolors in a galaxy style that I learned from Sarah Trump, and then I just created some florals on top of that using gel pen and then glazing in. And this was experimentation with lettering. I don't really love this. I might actually paint over this and redo it because it's not my favorite thing in my journal. It was a good experiment, but it can go now, and then I can, you know, do it in a way that pleases me. This made me ridiculously happy. This is indeed all my handwriting. So that's just me like spilling onto the page in a very elongated hand. And I just join up the lettering so that it's illegible. So I protect my privacy, but also get to really express myself. And then this is a typical sort of thing for me to do. Often these figures, it's almost always a trio of figures, will show up in my journals when I especially need comfort. It's like my wisdom counsel. This was a Stabilo All painting. This started with Stabilo All on top of just like a grungy background that I created with collage scrapbooking papers and brayered in paints. And she led me on quite a journey. I was listening to a song by Kirsten Pixton, who is one of my favorite artists. She's just such a lovely musician. And I was listening to it on repeat. And this painting happened as a result. So this started as a just a background, and then I started to doodle. And the doodle went on for a week and a half. It was a period of time where I was just really needing a lot of soothing. I mean, the intensity of the detailing in here is just incredible. So that was like a week and a half. I would really love to do more of this, but I find myself very impatient lately. These happen when I need them to happen. And then the text was an afterthought. It was like this got done first, and then this felt appropriate to go with the doodle. These are what I call medi doodles, where like I'm using doodling as a self-soothing tool. And then I did the same song again. This is from the same song. I just wanted to repeat the process and see what would happen. There's a labyrinth stencil in the background here that is really rocking my Pop-Tarts. Labyrinth obsession happening here. Again, just really just experimenting in this journal. So I did all of this paint in the background, and then I did a stencil resist. So I just, instead of stenciling into a stencil, I wiped paint out of a stencil, and that's how I got this effect. Here's one of my sort of signature characters that come through from my wisdom council. This is done in the watercolor meditation style that I demonstrated and bought a few years ago, and then it's all glazed over. And this was just a bunch of mark making. Very, very self-soothing spread. You can see here I matched up the circles. That's the thing I really like to do, is make sure that this spread relates to this spread somehow when they're flips like this. Just a face. This was super fun. So this was a combination of just layering in the background and some reverse stencil resist stuff. And then I put these circles in and did medi doodles in these two. These two were both medi doodles. And then finished it up with a skeleton stencil by Sarah Trump. This was playing with the Paveo iridescence and fluorescence. Love this spread so hard. I don't even remember what this was about, but obviously I was in some kind of trauma, because this is, oh, hey, it's going to be okay. Pass it on. It might have had something to do with the election. This was a struggle. I was really contemplating my attraction to ambivalent men who can't quite show up. And I had become really obsessed with Beyonce. She has a song called Hold Up, which is actually a riff off of or derivative of the song Maps by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. And I just love the song. So I was working with that sort of inspiration. This was hours of work. I could probably do something with this side of the spread. There's really nothing going on here except color and texture. And really, we call this abstract painting. When you're happy with a background and you're feeling like it doesn't want anything more, we call that an abstract painting. This one doesn't have enough value contrast for me to call it done, though. This would need something, some kind of focal image, or maybe like a swatch of like really bright color, or some kind of sentiment would finish it off for me. So I'll probably come back in and finish that. This was a quick sketch that turned into a spread. I was sort of thinking about a Dr. Seussian kind of character. And I feel like that was really effective. I feel like that really worked. But this is too whimsical for me. You know, I made it and I looked at it and I was like, this is not really me. It's too whimsical for me. This went through so many iterations. I could not get it right. I was really frustrated with it. I kept trying to build up cherry blossoms, and it just turned into a total mess. Some of you may remember me sharing it on social media and saying, help me, please. And in the end, I decided to just push it all down and then just create in silver. And while it's not my favorite thing I've ever created, I like it much better than it was. Yes, Deborah, there will be a replay. I love this so much. So this was a combination of just playing with drippage and playing with Medidoodles. This really dropped me into my body in a massive way. I can remember the sense of relief coming over me as I was working. It just increasingly became slower breathing and just a calmer sense of self as I painted this. And this is a fantasy feather. It's one of my signature moves. The initial inspiration for these feathers was Tamara Laporte, who taught fantasy feathers in Lifebook. She did hers with paint markers to begin with, and I just couldn't do it, which was really odd because generally I prefer the control I get with a paint marker over a paintbrush, paint on a paintbrush. You'll see me using markers and paint markers quite a lot when I want to get some kind of detailing. But the feathers themselves really required a paintbrush for me, so I adapted and started creating my own versions of those fantasy flowers, and now I do them all the time. I just absolutely love them. This was very painful. You can see all of this in the background is all writing. And I just kept writing until my body was empty. You can see here, I was really working with self-soothing doodles, creating like this, almost like a loving mother figure over here on this side. This was all done in the same sort of 48-hour period. That's what they all say, though, babe. So you can see this was about, you know, romantic love and what was going on in my relationship and trying to figure out what was subtext and, you know, what was true and all that shit that we women go through when we're dating someone. So this was just self-soothing. This was really exciting. I had just started Fresh Paint, which is a class by Flora Bowley that helps you to explore painting from a really free place. And this was one of the spreads that happened as a result. I was just experimenting with different sort of floral shapes to see which ones I liked, and I fell in love with the spread altogether. I'm like, I just love it. And this one was more of that. It was working with metallics and a lot of drippage and brayering and mark making, and turned into really one of my favorite spreads of all time. And just in case you can't see it, it says, when nothing is sure, everything is possible. Live here. So again, one of those self-soothing spreads. And another. I love her so much. I just want to smooch her right in the face. You can see here how the faces are now getting much more elongated. My style is really emerging at this point in the journey. I'm really starting to rock these elongated faces. And then this was 2019. This was also 2019. Skipped forward to last week. This was last week. I'm going to be developing a workshop in this technique, so stay tuned. I think this is going to be a part of a brand new Facing Forward. So you have Facing Forward 1 and 2, and I think it's time for Facing Forward 3 very soon. And this will be a technique that I teach in that class. This is just a lip up girl. I've really been excited to work with these lip up girls. This has one of the flaps, but I actually turned it into a pocket. I've been doing this practice called active imagination, and I wanted a place where I can put some of my favorite ones. Active imagination is Kate Blanchett. This one, Judith. Active imagination is when I sort of write a fantasy about what my life would be like if it were perfect, and I'm finding it very soothing. And there are some that could easily be turned into poems, so I'm going to be working on that and adding these in here. Oh, and this pocket was made with embroidery thread. This was our very first official journal jam. I did not finish this on camera. Judith, Kate Blanchett. This one, I don't really see it. She really looks like my sister. But it's funny, a lot of my faces really look like my sister. Like sometimes it feels as though my sister is actually coming through in my art journal. For those of you who don't know, I lost my sister to suicide in 1996. She often comes through in my journal. So this, what we got with this spread, we got as far as the background, the flower, and these sort of fun details. And then I finished it off with Frida, some bubble wrap, and the text. And I'm in love with this palette now. Absolutely in love with it. So super excited about it. It's so beautiful. Are you guys sure you don't find this boring? I feel a little bit like I'm, you know, bragging here. I just really want you to show you, you know, first of all, what a journal looks like when it's full. Because it's something that not a lot of us achieve. There's a bunch of people waiting to come in, so I'm going to go ahead and let them in. Oh, you poor babies. I'm so sorry for making you wait. I love this Frida page too, Sally. It's so like, and this is legit the first Frida painting I have ever done. Now, of course, I just threw a photograph of her in the journal, but I love it so much. I love how I went looking for colors that would go really well in this spread. You can see we've got the same pinks and the same oranges. in the spread, and it just all goes together so beautifully. We even have some of the same blues in the background. So this made me ridiculously happy. So this was our first journal jam, but you guys didn't get to see me finishing it. This is my version of Tamara Laporte's Protection Warrior as seen on YouTube. I haven't finished it yet. This is so not my style. The face is my style, but these colors are so not my colors. So I'm actually having trouble coming back to it. It's a little bit too pretty and pastel-y for me, but I really want to finish her just to see where I can take her. She kind of reminds me of the She Blooms in Ink paintings that Tam did for a workshop. And in fact, these are the Ecoline markers that Tam tends to use. This was our second journal jam. I haven't yet done anything more with it. I don't know that I will. I feel like it needs some contrast here and there. I love this part. I love where I took the tacks and I let it kind of cut the copper off from the blue. That really rocked my Pop-Tarts. So that's something that I'm going to be doing again. And I've really been enjoying my lettering. I've gotten really much more careful about my lettering over the last few days. The other day, this starts as a magazine image, which I pushed way back with glaze, so it was barely visible. Like, you could barely see it. Hi, dude. Oh, he's letting the cat out. I'm going to be demonstrating that at some point because it's a really, really fun technique. Often I'll use my own face in a graphite transfer, but in this case it was just a magazine image, which I almost never work with. And I just glued it down, pushed it way back with glazes, added paint all over, and then built it up this way. I'm in love with her. She's just absolutely fearsome. And then we have the last page of this journal, and this is what we're going to be working on today. And then I'll take you through my bod. This is my book of days for 2020. So I built this at the end of 2020 and have been filling it up ever since. This is where all of my classes are taught. So if I'm teaching in Moonshine or Book of Days or Life Book or Paint Pen Pull or Badass Art Journal, wherever I'm teaching, it happens in this book. So this can be considered like a coffee table book, where this one would be a little bit more personal and private, and I might not hand this to just anyone. I feel really comfortable handing these to whoever comes in my house and wants to see what it is that I do for a living. Here, this is what I do. It's a hand-bound journal. It's Canson XL. Watercolor paper, 11 by 14, I believe. There are 5 folios, 1, 2, 3, 4 folios of 4 signatures of 5 folios each. I'm going to have to put more signatures in this before the end of the year, just because I'm doing so much more art. The canvas cover got decorated, and then we just spend a year in my multiple classes filling it up. These are my sort of signature Effie roses. This is Art Magic. So these are paintings we do in Moonshine, where we're actually working with the phase of the moon in order to call in what we want and express gratitude for what we want. So we do 3 spreads a month. One is just a monthly theme spread. And then there's a time-lapse new moon spread, which is meant to be magic toward the attainment of our desire in concert with the phase of the moon and the sign the moon is in. And then at full moon, we celebrate. We just acknowledge what it is that's working, what we have, what we're grateful for. So that's an example of those kinds of paintings. This one was a full moon painting, and this one was a new moon painting. This was an exploration of the meditative watercolors as taught by Rachel Kentish in Book of Days. And this is Darling Human, which is a program I teach over on Patreon. So once a month they get a full-length mixed media art lesson that's based off the calendar that I created at the end of 2019. And this is Bridget. This was obviously for Moonshine. This is what I call a paper shrine. So paper shrines are where you paint devotional paintings to feeling tones or energies or deities or archetypes in order to honor them and call their energy in. This was added into Book of Days as a bonus that accompanied Kyla Givehand's lesson in this particular origami fold. I really wanted to demonstrate how I would use this as what we call an MDS, which is a multi-day spread. So I demonstrated that for Book of Days. So basically you create the background, you create the this piece of paper, and then you fold it in an origami way, glue it in and come back into it every day until it's all full. Super fun. This was the main lesson for Book of Days in February 2019. I love how the interference paints that I was using in that lesson make this rock look like labradorite. That's really fitting considering that this is meant to be up north. I spent a fair bit of time in the north. In fact, when Gigi was born, I was living in Coral Harbor, Northwest Territories, and then we moved to Baker Lake, Northwest Territories shortly after he was born. This is an amautique, which is a traditional indigenous baby carrying garment that I wore every day because you don't put your babies in a carriage up north or they will freeze to death. You wear them on your back, and Inuit women are expert at grabbing the baby from the back and flipping it around the front to breastfeed. I got okay at it. I was never great at it, but I got okay at it. But baby wearing is a huge thing up there. This was actually something that I thought I was going to turn into a lesson, but I was having so many feels that it just went off the rails. Off the fucking rails, man. It went off the rails. So I love it, and I will keep it, and I will try and duplicate the lesson because I think it's an awesome lesson. This is actually a paint over of a face that I found on Unsplash. She started out as this like super fierce looking, beautiful, smoky-eyed woman, and I turned her into a clown, like the fool for love, which was perfect for what I was feeling at the time. Obviously, I could do something with this spread. Haven't done anything with it yet. These are both for Moonshine. This is obviously for full moon in Leo. And this is for new moon in Pisces. So the emphasis in Moonshine is not to make beautiful art. The emphasis in Moonshine is to use art as a way to spell cast. So we use the art to raise energy toward the attainment of our desire or to stir up a sense of devotion or gratitude, but the art's not the point. It's funny though, when you work this way, the art often takes on a really sort of mysterious feeling that I personally really, really enjoy. This was the Darling Human spread for, I believe this was for February. This is interactive. Look at that. How cool that is. This took about 5 stinking hours to create and demonstrate, but I loved it so much. It was just the most fun ever. This is for a lesson that's upcoming in Badass Art Journal, so you guys are getting a sneak peek. This face was created with primary colors and white and black. So there was initially no other colors used. I literally used primary red, primary cyan and cadmium yellow medium in order to create this flesh tone. The hair got some work with some burnt orange, but the rest of the face was all just done with primaries and black and white, and I'm really excited that I can do that and that I can teach that. This was a demonstration of how this, when I did the initial sketch, I just sort of added a line from her hair into this spread, and then I wanted to demonstrate how you can use that as a jumping off point. And this is a bonus. I just created this whole spread right off the cuff as a bonus for that class. It's going live this month, or no, April. Going live in Badass Art Journal in April. Those of you in Book of Days will remember this spread. This was our lesson for March. She's a beauty. I'm in love with her. She is mostly Tombow markers in the face with a little touch of acrylic paint. Obviously a moonshine painting. This is done using a photograph of myself, and then there's the paint over. Doesn't matter what I do. Whenever I do a paint over of my own face, I end up with like a honkin' nose. Like a massive honkin' nose. This was also for Moonshine, both of these. As you can tell right now, this is March. This is when I'm moving into needing to do a lot of really playful self-soothing in order to keep myself from going off the rails. I feel like I'm living in an episode like The Stand by Stephen King, so I do a lot of self-soothing. This one was for full moon, and this one was for new moon in March. You guys will recognize this because you got this for free. This lesson was for Darling Human for March 2020. Another elongated lip up girl. This palette is really inspired by my friend Sal Shiva, who does these amazing characters, and then she does a very simple background, usually just color. But she's so adept with color that it just pops like crazy. Like you look at it and you're just like blown away by like how well they go together. I mean, Penelope, I would have said yes a couple weeks ago, but lately I've really been playing with color a lot. I've been sort of moving into a lot more modern color and lots of bright colors, just because I really need this kind of play right now. You guys will recognize this if you joined me for our test stream, which was just meant to see if the new software that I got for doing these lives was working. She still doesn't have text. I haven't decided what she wants at this point. But she was demoed. The videos are up in the Wilderhood, so you can actually watch the replay of that. I won't be editing this one though, so you'll just have to deal with the fact that it's in 3 pieces. And it's really long. This is the monthly painting for Moonshine for April 2020. This happened incredibly intuitively. It just came to be, and in the PDF for Moonshine for this month, I'm going to go into a lot of detail about what happens when you're sitting in uncertainty and you risk it anyway. You think about it, you percolate with it, and you let whatever wants to come. This is the kind of thing that happens, and I'm really in love with this little guy. And that's it for Bod, for my Book of Days for this year. So I still have quite a few spreads to go, but I am going to need to sew in at least one more signature. And then let me just show you this one, because this one is really special. It started as a journal that I had dedicated to a class I was taking with Kristen Chambers, who is also known as Pan Art. She really set me free in a major way. This painting is actually available as a print on Society 6 because it looks nothing like the painting that we were instructed to make. But this side is very much a copy or like a riff off of what Kristen taught in the class. So this one is not available as a print. This is also Kristen inspired. The class is called Magical Forest, and it's available as a self-guided e-course. You can get it on her website, panart.com, or Etsy as well. Just search for it, Magical Forest with Pan Art or Kristen Chambers. Also inspired by Kristen, but this is nothing like what we were instructed to paint. Look at this little birdie. I love this little birdie. Also inspired by Kristen Chambers. This is actually a painting by my lovely Kristen. And this is a little thing I got with something I bought from Tam. The texture in this makes me want to touch myself. It is like so good. Yeah, gorgeous. Also inspired by Kristen Chambers, but also did not look anything like the painting that she demonstrated. This is how I learn, right? I watch a class, I take notes, I jot down, like, what do I like about the lesson? What would I do with the lesson? What would I like to try? How could I emulate without copying? That's really how I learn. Same. Inspired by. It was one of the first classes really that I did from start to finish. Was Kristen's class, so I highly recommend it. This was me just wandering off onto my own. So I was really enjoying the Pebeo iridescent high viscosity paints and started playing with those, and these popped out. You could probably see some influence from Floriboli in this. This is kind of a Floriboli sort of shape, but this is definitely an FE painting. This was just fun with swatching. So I bought a bunch of watercolor paints and I swatched all of them. This is where my total obsession with watercolors began. You'll recognize Tam's style in this painting. I love looking at Tam's art, and I love creating alongside Tam. But whenever I try to create from a Tam lesson, I never feel like it's me. I would have to really change this in order to feel a sense of connection with it. In fact, the words in here are, I will never be this girl, and that's perfect. Because who I am is just fine. This is just not my jam at all. Beautiful to look at, absolutely beautiful to look at. And you learn so much from copying an artist that you love. But I would need to change this so much in order to feel a sense of connection with it. This was for when I was on the stencil team with Sarah Trump. I love this spread. And I think I taught this somewhere. I think this was in mixed tape, perhaps. This was also done for the stencil team for Sarah Trump. This is one of her stencils that I used in this painting. And then I sat down and started doing this yesterday, and this is just metallic watercolors on top of black gesso. No idea what I'm going to do with it. And then the rest of the book remains to be written. I have many, many more journals, but I'm not going to show you the rest of them because then we'd be here all day doing nothing but looking at my art journals, and I'm sorry, but I find that kind of boring. So it's time to move on and do something else.